Hello everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to restore an Amazon Redshift cluster with Veeam backup for AWS. But before I start, I want to point out that we only support the restore of clusters to the same AWS account to which the source cluster belongs and to the same AWS region where the source cluster resides. Also, we don't support the restore of Amazon Redshift serverless at the moment. Now let's start. Here I'm on Veeam Backup and Replication. I have deployed my Veeam Backup for AWS already, and I'm going to open the console. As you see, I have a warning because something happened to the cluster I was protecting. Let's go to the policy and see what's going on. If I click on the warning, we'll see that it tells me one of the resources protected is missing. And why is that? If I go to my AWS console, I'll see that the cluster is not there because I have already deleted it. So I ran the backup job again, and that's why I got the warning. Now let's restore the cluster. Go to Protected Data, Databases, and Redshift, and select the cluster that you want to restore. Click Restore. Here you can add the clusters to the restore session, and you can choose more than one cluster if you want to. Then select the restore points to be used to perform the restore operation. By default, Veeam Backup for AWS uses the most recent valid restore point, but you can choose any that you want. Click Apply and click Next. In this step, you have to specify an IAM role that has the permissions to perform the restore operation on your AWS account. For the demo, I'm using the default one, but you should create a different one with granular permissions. You can just follow the wizard to add a new role. Also, you can check the permissions of your role to see if it will perform the restore operation. You can also choose to provide a one-time access key to perform the restore operation, and the key won't be saved on the configuration database. In this step, you have the option to restore to the original location with the same source settings, or you can select to restore with different settings. That's why I'm going to pick. At the encryption step of the wizard, you can choose whether the cluster will be encrypted with an AWS KMS key. So you can apply the existing encryption scheme, or you can change the key that will be used for cluster encryption. Remember that the encryption key must be stored in the same AWS region where the source Redshift cluster resides, and the IAM role that you just specified must have permissions to access the key. If you want to use a KMS key from an AWS account other than the AWS account to which the specified IAM role belongs, you can select Add Custom Key ARN and specify it here. I'm going to keep with the original encryption scheme. Now here in the settings, you can choose to rename the cluster, and you can also edit the cluster configuration, like the node type for the restored cluster, the number of nodes, the parameter group that will be applied to the restored cluster, and you can also replace the original IAM role associated with the cluster. In the networks setting, you can change the VPC where the restored cluster will be deployed. You can change the subnet group in which the cluster will be launched, the availability zone where the cluster will reside, and also the port that will be used to access the cluster. Below, you can also specify security settings to control what IP addresses will be able to connect to databases in the restored cluster. So for instance, if you want to make the cluster accessible outside of the selected Amazon VPC, just toggle this on and then specify the security group. Finally, specify a reason for the restore. You'll see a summary of your settings and click Finish. Now the restore operation will start, and we can check everything that's happening in the session logs. I'm just going to fast forward it until the operation is complete. Great. The restore process is done. Now let's head back to our AWS console and refresh it. And here you'll see the Redshift cluster is back up and running. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to check the documentation. I'll leave a link in the description below. And I'll see you at the next video.